Good morning. Let me really state that it's really my greatest pleasure to be here with you today. And maybe the question I would be asking Kevin, why did it take us this long? And I really want to appreciate all the comments that have been made by the CEO and even the President, and especially the fact that we don't have to fight misinformation on our own. I mean, we need that assistance. And we really welcome that great opportunity to partner together. Both of us, in terms of what we do, is very critical to this country. The role of the media cannot be overemphasized. It is really critical for any functional democracy. On our part, we cannot also underestimate the power and really what electricity services do provide. I think one of the jokes I've actually been giving is that about 5-10 years ago, if someone had a blackout or had an outage that lasted a day or two, it didn't look very long. But in the days we live in, I do get calls of somebody possibly who has, maybe there's an outage for about an hour, and the guy will actually tell you, I've had an outage for 2 weeks. And they are right. Because if you look at how that 1 hour is, it would really appear to be like 2 weeks, by virtue of the fact of over-reliance and very serious dependence on electricity. So I'm really honored to have you people around, even as we engage. And as we open this conversation, which I do appreciate Kevin has stated that it's not going to be the last one. I think we are going to have more and more frequent. Maybe before I go to my presentation, you did ask a question of what usually happens when it rains. And the simple answer is that if we are allowed to clear the traces, and I think you saw the uproar that did arise not long ago when we started clearing the trees from near our lines. I do remember, and I really want to appreciate the role of the media in even the campaign that we had then, that when we started cutting these trees, of course some were really seeing like KPLC standing against the environment, not really realizing that the reason why whenever it rains, people have outages is just that there are too many trees right close to the line. In fact, let me shock you, and this is really a very good forum, that possibly over 60 to 70% of the outages that individual customers face is because of the trace, just because of trace clearance. To the extent that if we are allowed to clear all the traces across the entire network, the issue of having outages would be something that is not very common. I do remember that when we started even the process of trace clearance, there are those who are really resisting. Some reluctantly allowed us to clear the traces. Whenever there is any wind and it sways, and during the process of swaying, or even when it rains, and there are some drips from the branches, together, of course, with the fact that some do collapse or fail or fall down, then, of course, it does cause those damages and result in the failures that we do experience once it rains or once certain things do occur. And let me also start by acknowledging that, yes, it is very true that the image of Kenya Power has not been that good. And there was a time really where I think things were rather complicated for Kenya Power, in the sense that I do remember when I got on board in 2023, I came in at a time when a number of challenges were being experienced by the company. One of the key challenges was the fact that procurement of materials had become a major challenge. And the reason why it did become a challenge was that whenever we would tender for certain materials, and the materials would be used to connect new customers, such as meters, or transformers to replace the ones which are off-circuit, or even to fulfill certain orders, those who bid, whoever would lose would go to court to block the other one. And it did happen that for a period of almost 1 year, even approaching 2 years, there were certain materials which the company could not procure. So on one side was a very key commitment by staff to answer to the call of the customers who require the services, customers who had paid and needed to be connected, or transformers which had failed and they needed to replace. But on the other side, the court process, or rather the bidders had created a situation where they would not be able to get those materials to be able to answer to those challenges. And so on one side, we had staff who are really frustrated by virtue of the fact that they would see the pain in customers' faces. And at times, they would receive calls. And some of them were not very kind calls. But on their part, they were unable to address those issues. And it was not of their own making. And that's actually why I do believe that even this engagement today is really going to assist us to address some of these constraints. Because I do believe that the more the media gets to know what the issues and what the challenges are, the easier it can be to rally even the entire population or the public to support KPLC as it discharges its mandate of ensuring that we have what we are calling reliable and power which is available. Oh, now I think you need to log into Paul. I took some time. But this engagement is really useful. And the reason why I do believe it is quite useful is that there are many things the members of the public can assist us in addressing. One of the key issues, which I know was not part of my presentation today, is the issue of vandalism. We still have serious challenges with the vandalism of transformers. And part of the reasons why even the public at times do experience outages emanate from the action of criminals who vandalize the transformers, they vandalize the earthing materials which really protect our infrastructure. And in the process, of course, our network at times can fail by virtue of those criminal acts. But I always want to single out one of the MPs, I think the MP of Ainapkoi, who rallied these people that whenever at night, say you see an outage occurring, and you see just there is a power interruption, arise and rush to your nearest transformer. And in so doing, because all the customers who are connected are within 600-meter radius from the transformer, by him just rallying his people, so that whenever there is an outage at night, they all rush there, they have managed to prevent so many acts of vandals. And of course, in that, it ensured the communities continue to be served, and on our part, it ensured that service was not interrupted, and there was no serious damage to our infrastructure. So those are some of the initiatives which I say that if we engage them all, and you assist us to engage the members of the public, then we can really work together towards the achievement of that available and reliable power. Now, back to my presentation today. Who we are the energy solution provider of choice, and we are powering people for better lives by innovatively securing business sustainability. The mandate of Kenya Power starts from purchasing bulk electricity supply. We are the single off-taker. I think we did appreciate the presence of John Eudia, the general manager responsible. I think many other times the public think that the power we sell actually belongs to Kenya Power. I think it is very useful for the public to know that the power that Kenya Power sells does not belong to Kenya Power. This is power we buy from, of course, we have KenGen, the government entity, or rather a state parastatal, and we do also have a number of independent power producers. Together with that, we also do import power from Ethiopia, and we also get support from Uganda. We also now have an interconnector with Tanzania, where power flows in both directions. So that is the space where we get all the power that is eventually sold to the Kenyans. And that's actually why, even as we carry on the conversation, whenever anybody is really paying, they should be knowing that this is not paying Kenya Power per se. This is actually paying the entire energy sector. All the resources for the entire energy sector across the continuum of generation, transmission, and distribution and retail. All of it is collected by Kenya Power. The other function that Kenya Power does is power dispatch and the system as a system operator. This happens in Juja. This is where you have the national control system, or rather even the team that work with them to ensure that they match what is being consumed with what is being generated. The other role Kenya Power plays is the retail of electricity, and then we do also build and maintain a robust network. And of course, we want to have happy customers. That is our goal. And I think together, even as we have this engagement, our goal is really to ensure that we have more happier customers. And I do believe that in this partnership and in this engagement, we can help one another to foster and to arrive at a large number of happy customers. In terms of the ownership, again, this is something that a number of Kenyans are not aware. The ownership of the government in Kenya Power is 50.1%. That is to say, 49.9% is private. These are private, is owned by private shareholders with varying number of shares. We do trade in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We are present in 8 administrative regions and 47 counties. Though in terms of what we have, or in terms of the counties, we actually use 49. And the reason being, Nairobi being a very big region, has 3 counties for the purpose of administration. We have a staff population of 10,535. I think this answers O'Brien. I think he had asked a question on that line. And the number of customers, again to answer to O'Brien, is over 9.91 million. So it's not 2 million customers or 2 million households that are connected. Most of these actually are households. If you have to remove the industrial customers, those ones, I mean, they may not, they are just, if you combine and the SMEs, they are just hundreds of thousands. So the higher number is really households. And in an household, on average in Kenya, how many people do you have in a household? Maybe about 5. So if you are then to look at the number of people who have electricity connections, just by virtue of that estimation, you are almost close to 50 million, maybe about 45 million. The total energy we purchased last year was 13,684 gigawatt hours, but the sales were 10,516 gigawatt hours. Our asset base is Kenyan shillings 385 billion, but again, that might be slightly misleading, because one of the principles that we do use as a company is historical cost. So if you are to look at the value of electricity house in our books, it's less than a 1,000 note. I mean, 1,000 shilling note? In our books, electricity house is actually valued at less than that. So let's look at the energy sector ownership structure. If you look at the energy sector, I think this is also a very useful diagram that actually shows the entire sector, because what Kenya Power collects is for the entire sector. I think if there is one thing I really need to emphasize, so that people do not associate what they pay just with Kenya Power. They should associate what we pay to the entire energy sector. That is generation, where you have the players, the likes of KenGen, independent power producers. We do also have, in terms of the drilling and exploration, GDC. In the same space of generation, we also do have REREC, because they have a solar plant in Garissa, which generates about 55 megawatts. And then I did mention before that there are even those, the power that we actually import from beyond our borders. So we have generation, transmission, and distribution. In the space of generation, I think you have KenGen, you can see you have KenGen. GDC is more involved in steam development and what they call it the de-risking of that exploration. You have IPPs, there is Nupea, ultimately, and import from TANESCO, UETCL, and EEP. So that is more of, for TANESCO and UETCL, that is more of a tie line. So that means power can flow in either direction, but more usual than ever for the link to Uganda. This is the oldest link, by the way. It was built in the 50s, the link that connects us with Uganda. And the one for EEP, that one is more recent, 2021, and we do import about 200 megawatts. You come to the transmission space, the players within the transmission space is KETRACO and also KPLC. We do have some transmission lines, but majority, or rather in terms of the quantum, KETRACO would be having possibly over 60% of the transmission lines. Then on the distribution end, we have also REREC playing a role. This is mainly to do with last mile. When it comes to last mile or the rural electrification customers,